And like almost everybody, when you ask them, you're like, why do you want to talk to me?
Hmm.
You
I
know,
mean,
like what did I do?
I had the same exact reaction. You messaged me, and I was like, "You just got done talking to Jackie Sherrill. What you're setting the bar pretty high. Do you wanna put some people between me and Jackie Sherrill? That's a good idea."
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody's got everybody's got like a unique experience, and sometimes when you're in the middle of that experience, you don't realize the significance of your experience.
Sure.
You know, you're just like, just whatever. I'm not that guy. But then that guy's like, I'm not that guy.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when I met everybody. I think we swung by Stack Site one time on the way to a football game and met the one lonely jerp out there. I want to say that's probably when I met him. And right back at you, man. Cool guy. I like the bunch of jerps I have met.
Yeah, I mean, they all turn into different people than you expected.
Hmm.
You know, like I've never, I don't think I've ever said, okay, this junior is going to be like this,
Hmm.
right? From what I've seen them as Chiefs or whatever, and then they turn into that. I
Hmm.
think I think maybe the only exception in all history is Kenneth. Like he was what I thought he would be, but everybody else is surprising.
Yeah. You said Kenneth. I'm surprised you didn't list one of my buddies. I think the legend of Shane Hennig. I think everyone knows what you're going to get when Shane's in the room, and I think everyone knew exactly what you were going to get when he was picked to be a to jerp. And yeah, no, he's a character for sure.
I I think that, I mean, that's it's probably, I guess that's probably accurate. I did not know that he would boil it down so much.
Hmm.
You know, like he went from serious to more serious.
That's true. That's true.
And then even as a senior, I'm like, hey, you know you're a senior now, right? Like you can have fun now. It's
That's
okay.
true. I think he was having a bit more fun in the background than maybe people were seeing. But if he ever hears this conversation, I meant that in the most loving possible way, and I meant that everyone knew he was going to be a great jerp and a great senior, and he was. So um, yeah, but Kenneth as well.
My
Same comment.
my big surprise introduction to Shane was we were having our the first annual meeting after he got uh, offered as a candidate,
Hmm.
and it was the all hands chiefs and all that stuff meeting,
Right.
and I needed a pinch of tobacco, and I knew that he had it,
Hmm.
but I didn't know, his given name. I just knew A Train, but he was picked up as a candidate, so I was
Right.
like A Train, A Train, A Train. And after a little bit, he just turns around and goes, "It's Shane." I was like, "Oh, dude, you're taking this serious right off the bat. Okay, okay, Shane."
He did. He did. I'd say he's probably the scariest one out of the bunch. That's for sure. With us, he that was Shane though. That wasn't an act. That was all him.
Yeah, yeah. You know how much of it was, and I don't want to say it's ever an act because everybody's always being honest.
Hmm.
But I think that part of the process of being a junior is to not evince some of the other parts of your personality,
Hmm.
and then only just all that anybody ever sees is these parts that people identify with being a junior, right?
Right.
So nobody's ever acting like somebody who's super intense or
Hmm.
somebody who's laser focused or whatever. That's part, but they just don't let you see the part where they're telling jokes and having fun.
Yeah. No, exactly. I
And
think. I was having a conversation with someone one time, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy you're different now, like since you're not a junior more." And I'm like, "I'm not different. That was me. That was a part of me. That's just maybe a little more amplified version of that part of me. But that wasn't an act. That was a everyone has it in them. That's for sure."
yeah, yeah. But you figure out how people really, the whole picture. when they become seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always shocking to me. Always shocking. I mean, the moment that, you know, the junior tackles the senior and takes the pot, it's just, it changes. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh my gosh, like you're a goofball or,
Right.
you're funny or you're whatever. Uh, but, Shane was one that, he took the pot and was just like, all right, more of the same.
That's true. Uh,
Uh,
he has a different side to him that maybe he didn't show everybody. He's that serious guy, but he's a goofball too.
yeah,
Love my buddies. Couldn't have asked for a better group of guys.
dude. And that's it, man. That's it. Everybody walks away and, it's sort of like parents, uh, being a parent and the kids, you know, sometimes they see one side getting frustrated or exasperated at the other.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, they're like, oh, we're a team, we're a family.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes it's only inside that family that that people realize just how tight that family is. But
Oh,
y'all
absolutely.
were certainly like what like Scott said, right? Like you're the guys he would want in a bar fight.
Something like that. Yeah, those
Yeah,
quotes are great. God, Scott has
yeah,
a way with words. That was fun.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we were an interesting bunch. I think our strength was that we really brought out the best in each other. I mean, I think me by myself, I don't think I would have been a great Redpot. I think that it really took having Shane and Joseph Howard next to me to really bring that out, and I hope I did the same to them. Individually, I wouldn't say we're very much legendary characters, and but together, I mean, I think we had a great year. And I think when you first reached out to me, you're like, "Hey, I want to have a conversation with you." I almost came back and said, "Hey, can I get my buddies in the room too? Because
Yeah.
any story I tell is just gonna be incomplete without the perspectives of those two right alongside it, and those are the best conversations to have. So maybe when this podcast blows up, you can have us in the studio that you build and
Right,
Premier Fire chat, all of us.
right. Um, yeah, yeah. Let me tell my wife that that's the direction we're headed.
Big scale.
Gotta retire, honey. Um, so I can build a studio. Uh, no, and that's I mean, and that's part of what's exciting about the conversations is every conversation fires up two, three, four more.
Hmm.
Um, and I do want to talk to everybody. And there were there's a couple lined up that I think they're still trying to. Hey, can I have mine with other people?
Hmm.
And I'm absolutely yes, we will do that at some point.
Hmm.
But I also want to have it with just you,
Sure.
you know. And it is nice to be like, all right, so when you weren't in the room, this is how they
Right.
remember it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, for sure, at some point we're gonna um, it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So
Cool.
with with all that talk
Hmm.
about y'all being the guys that somebody wants to get in a bar fight with, the and then Shane, Mr. Tough Guy, and Joseph. I mean, he was a gentle giant
Hmm.
until he wasn't gentle.
Oh yeah.
So y'all were big tough dudes. Um, and yet one of the things that y'all did that people remember that as a class happened that people remember is kind of in the aftermath of uh, burn of 2013, what one of the Aggie non-fires, let's call
Hmm.
it. Now I don't want to lead the witness, but first set this stage. How do you remember the weather situation in 2013? I have my memory of it, but how do you remember the weather situation for the whole season.
For the whole season, it was wet. Um, I remember the fear was that we wouldn't even have enough logs on the ground because we had to cancel some weekends because of the weather.
Mm.
Um, so I think that season, we had to either do some extended cuts or some cuts during off periods. You could totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember some extra time that needed to be spent to get those logs out of the woods just because it was so wet. And then the process of actually getting them to stack site, I mean, that was always a mess. Um, we had rain during multiple stack shifts. I think some stack shifts got canceled, so push was probably even more important that year because we had to really pile things into only a couple of days of build time. Um, we had people getting stuck in the mud just trying to get out of stack site almost every stack shift. I remember it was always it was a heck of a game. You had to hit that road at a certain speed, go in the right direction
Right.
to just slide your way out of stack site. That was always fun. Of course, we had the tractors to help out, but yeah, it was wet for sure.
Yeah. Culminating in um, that last week.
Hmm.
I was trying to find the weather records locally for that last week. Um, because my memory of that last week, I'm just like my memory can't be accurate because I feel like it was like a half inch, a quarter inch a day
Hmm.
for for 8, 9, 10 days in a row, leading up to the night. Was it the night before burn or was it 2 nights before burn? Um, just the skies just opened up one night
Hmm.
and it dumped, and it was all that rain. Like I say, 24 hours, 48 hours before burn. Um, was it you that called me that morning about the delay?
Um, that's part of the memory that I can't recall. I'm not sure how it happened. It, it's got to be one of us, either me, Shane, or Joseph gave you a phone call.
Yeah, yeah, and because you had 2010 and 2011, which it was too dry.
Hmm.
And you got 1 year, the year where Coach Sherrill speaks at Burn.
Hmm.
Thank goodness that's the year that was good. And then 2013 is too wet and happening so close to Burn. With a Burn ban, it kind of builds up, and
Right.
2 months out, you're already going, I wonder
You
if
see
this
it
is going
coming.
to happen.
Yep.
But with what we had with the rain, yeah, it was a wet season, but that last week
Hmm.
being just insane. And then I, my memory was it was you because I definitely remember it was you when I got there.
Hmm.
But whoever I talked to said it's going to be a delay. No, no, dude, it's fine. It's fine. Let me come out there. No, Deanna, it's a delay. So
Hmm.
I I had to use my wife's car to drive out because my red '89 F-150 with the Bonfire license
Hmm.
plate was left out there because the brakes had locked up earlier in the week. So it
Hmm.
didn't work, and it was up there. And when I pull up in my wife's car to see just what this situation is, every single vehicle at Stack Site was sunk up to its axles. And people were
Yep.
trying to pull things out. And you could tell people had been trying to pull things out, but now both cars were sunk with a chain connecting them.
Hmm.
And there was one car that was not sunk. And it was my Ford that didn't even work. So, but sitting there at that front gate, not even able to drive the car in, going, "Oh, dude, I guess you're right. This is a nightmare."
Hmm.
Um, I was in pajama pants, I think, because I really thought I was just going to drive out and go, "This is fine."
Yep.
Um, and then Dwight, do you remember Dwight being there?
He, if you told me he was there, I'll believe you. He was everywhere from time to time.
So it's all of the ideas, right? Like get a train, bring people in here with the train, and
Oh yeah.
pick them up, pick them up on campus, bring 'em." And then that morning, when it's all a mess, somehow somebody called Dwight. He called us, whatever. Get you some fly ash. You gotta get you some fly ash. And I'm like, what are you saying? You saying flash? Flash. What's flash? Fly ash. Fly ash. What is fly ash? And
I do
then
remember that.
yeah, and he's trying to explain what fly ash is, and it comes from power plant. And we're like, how much does it cost? Doesn't matter. It's on the way. Like that big. It looked like a liquid tanker truck pulled up.
Yeah.
It looked like a thing for liquids, and
Yep.
it backed up with all that fly ash, and then a hose like it was pumping liquid,
Mm.
and then dumped all that fly ash. And I'm thinking, dude, what is this? And you jumped in autopilot mode and just started throwing fly ash.
Yeah.
Was
I
it
remember,
you? I'm almost certain it was you. It might have
Yeah.
been Dan who was there, but I'm pretty sure it was you.
Yeah. No, I think it had to have been one of the juniors and probably myself, just because the seniors were probably already halfway out the door at that point. But I do remember the fly ash because that was the first time I'd ever learned what the heck that even was. So as soon as you said that, I'm like, yep, that was Dwight.
Yeah.
And I remember we're like, how much can we spread and where can we spread it to make it actually viable? And then we started running the calculations of, okay, how many do we need? And then it got out of hand. We entertained the idea, but there was no way that was going to be the solution to our problem.
No, and I mean, hell, you got the one truck, and the truck could only back up to
Right.
the entrance. And when we started throwing that,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, without masks or whatever,
Yep.
so Lord knows we're gonna pay for that at some point. But started throwing that fly ash, and I'm thinking, what is this? It's like baby powder in a mud pit, and then damned if that mud pit didn't turn to concrete in like 10 seconds.
It stiffens
But
up.
yeah, that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
But like you say, that only got it like 10, 20 yards into sight.
Yep.
And that was
We
an
had
entire tanker trunk.
Yeah, we had the fly ash, and then someone that had the idea of using like mulch. I think we
Sorry.
mulched like the
Sorry.
entire. Was that you?
That was my fault.
That mulch was a mess. I remember we contacted we kept the crews away from the fly ash. I guess we had the foresight to think of that, but the mulch, we called a couple crews out there, and everyone was shoveling mulch around everywhere. I think we got one of the mulch truck, and we had, I guess, the entrance to stack site accessible, but how many acres we have out there to cover just wasn't going to work.
No, we started laying the mulch earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Which is that experience is the reason why we did not lay mulch at all this year.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like a good idea at the time until you start going over it. And all you're doing when you put mulch down is you're distributing that pumping action of the cars. So instead of pumping, it's now pumping a wider area as that mat of mulch. And then you just make a bigger mud pit. That mulch was awful. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
I even suggested getting a wood chipper and just chipping wood and blowing it. And Dwight's idea was better.
That you don't hear that said often, but
No.
give him credit where credit's due. No, I think it was amazing. You had so many people out there. Yeah, you had so many people out there just flinging ideas, and no one knew what was going on. And I guess that's some of the best parts of Bonfire. I'd say is you're coming up with an idea, seeing what works. It doesn't always work, but we had a fun time doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and it. I think I'm trying to remember the order of operations.
Mm-hmm.
For a while there, I don't know if there was anybody else on site because, like I say, I couldn't get in. I'm at the gate, and I hadn't been there for very long before the fly ash truck showed up. So I'm there with the fly ash and you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was other people stuck in there.
Yep.
But almost, before anybody else that I knew of got there, Clay Falls was there from KBTX, filming, and and sets up the camera, and I remember him kind of looking at it like, whoa, I dang,
Mm-hmm.
not even going to ask to go in there. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Um, but it in hindsight, you get through it, and it certainly helps in years like this, which is part one of the reason why I wasn't intending to have these conversations again until January and just kind of get through the holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pertinent and timely that we talk about Bonfire going through the same situation right now, and the fun thing being, and you experienced and you participated in this thought process that is, this is the end of the world. It's never happened before. This is, what do we do? Lawrence
Mm-hmm.
Sullivan Ross is going to rise from his, it's just awful. And then, with the benefit of hindsight, you realize, oh, there's nothing new under the sun. Stuff like this has happened before. And that was kind of the feeling going into looking at all this rain accumulate this year. Oh no, what do we do? And it didn't take looking back very far to go, oh, well, then what did they do a decade ago?
Mm-hmm.
And how did it hit them a decade ago? Because that's part of the thing you're thinking about too, is how is this going to affect the people that were leading? How did the weather inserting itself against what you guys were trying to do, how did that affect the people you were leading?
Yeah. I'm sure it's a pretty similar situation this year. At face value, it hurts. It hurts to spend months building something, all pointed towards this date, this burn date that we establish, and everything is counting down the days to burn. Everything's about burn, building towards this, building towards that, and everything kind of, leads in that direction. And then to have that couple days before, have the rug pulled out from underneath you, it's not a good feeling. It hurts. And I think it's very easy to follow into that trap of, oh man, that sucks. We don't get to burn. What's the point? Why did we do all this if we don't get to burn? But, I think it takes a little bit of reflection when that happens to realize that, it had nothing to do with burn. None of this was about burn in the end of it. We didn't spend weekends out there hanging out with everybody and working our asses off to burn it, really. We did that to build it. Burn it's just, the cliche statement, we burn it just to clear the field, right? Well, it's cliche because it's said so much because it's true, is the truth.
Yeah.
You just burn that thing to get it out of the way, so we can build again. Who cares about burn? But it hurt. I think it was a difficult decision. It was almost, an unheard of decision. I think when we brought the idea to the table of delaying burn, it's like, wait, we're going to actively decide to not burn? Like that's our decision. It wasn't a burn ban. It wasn't, the county telling us we couldn't burn. It was we have to make that decision on our own. So that was even more pressure and made it, potentially hurt a little more. But at the same time, having, your fate in your hands was a bit better for us, I think. I think the crews probably took it the hardest, but at the end of the day, when we sat down, me and my buddies with the seniors, we probably had the brown pots in the conversation. I'm sure you were involved in the conversation at least at some part with the board. Just logically kind of lining things up. It was the only logical decision to make. It didn't make sense to do it any other way than what we did. So, I think obviously it was the right decision, and I think it was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of things from back when I did it that I remember saying.
Mm-hmm.
Comes as no surprise that I said a lot of things, right? But there's one thing that I remember saying that still holds true, and you guys exemplified. At Bonfire, shit doesn't happen to you. You happen to shit. And shit happened, and y'all happened to it. Y'all just said, all right, here's what we're going to do with you. You big steaming pile or whatever. And and you got the situation under control. You represented things very well with the media, with the people you were leading, within each other. and just you turned it into, what you recognize there, that all right, we can sit here and navel gaze about how boo hoo we didn't get to meet some arbitrary date on a calendar, but hey, let's stop and pause and realize this opportunity we've been given to think about why we do this,
Absolutely.
which carries over into the spring semester. I mean, y'all's determination to happen to shit goes all the way into the spring. But before that happens, y'all have got to guard stack over the
Someone's
winter
got to be there.
break. So first of all, was that even part of your thinking about, all right, if we delay it, somebody's going to have to watch it? Did you even think about that?
Probably not. That was probably the last thing on our minds. There were so many other variables and things to consider. It was just if that's what happens, that's what's got to happen, and we'll do it.
Was there ever a moment like after you made the delay commitment and we're resolved to that we're going to execute it in this way now? Was there ever a moment where you went, "Oh, wait a minute"?
I'm sure there was. In full disclosure, I'm sure you remember it, and maybe the rules have changed or put quotations around rules. But back in my time, the responsibility typically to guard stack, after the juniors become seniors officially, is it typically falls on the backs of the baby brown pots, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not sure how much, full disclosure, I'm not sure how much we involved them in the conversation, to delay or not, knowing that, it'd probably fall on them. I'm sure we did talk to them a little bit about what that would mean. Plus, at that point, we had how many baby browns to split that up? I don't even know how many. There's a large number of browns. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we realized the decision that we made, what that meant for everybody. And I think part of, and maybe we didn't in some degree, and maybe part of that plays into why I was out there on Christmas Eve myself. But yeah, that decision definitely affected a lot of people.
Yeah, and you talk about the baby browns. I know they were the ones this year that were most impacted with the delay.
Mm.
There's this whole process of the stages of grief. You can almost see playing out again with the
Oh
whole
yeah.
denial, negotiation. No, we can make this work. This year, I've got Wyatt was the one
Mm.
calling me, "Hey, Dion, we think we've got another plan." And so I drive back out there this year, and then we take another long walk that I don't want to take. And they show me all this, and it's like, hey, this looks great, but what about this one spot right here? That
Mm.
to get from there to here, how are you going to get over here? Oh yeah, that's going to be a problem, you know. And there's just let's make it work, and then you finally it would be easier to just go, guys, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But they're not going to learn. You didn't learn. I didn't learn from somebody showing up and telling me this is the way it's got to be. We
Yep.
just go through that process, and so you get through that process, and then it happens. But a baby brown was only just recently a crew chief. I mean, one day they're a crew chief or a yellow pot or a butt pot in the core, and the next day they're a baby brown. They haven't figured out how to sharpen their chainsaw yet, let alone the complicated interplay of decisions that go into running the thing.
Right.
So it is sort of unfortunate that it's like, hey, sorry guys, we're gonna make this decision. And they certainly felt that this year.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like you say, you're out there on Christmas Eve. Now, before we get to that, where else would you have been on Christmas Eve
I would have been at
if
home
you
with my
weren't out
family.
there?
Yeah. Home with the parents, the family, siblings, everyone. Just normal Christmas back at home.
Yeah. Which is where's home?
Home is Austin for me.
Mm-hmm. Austin. Recalling some information that I don't think I knew until I read it. Home at Austin with a family who is
Has a background of attending the University of Texas.
all right.
Yeah.
So a family that let's say it's probably safe to assume has no understanding of why you would be even participating in Bonfire, let alone leading it, let alone choosing to be out there on
Hmm.
Christmas Eve. How did that go?
That's a funny question. I think you're right. I don't think my family understood at all the reasons why I was so passionate about Bonfire at the time. I think it was very hard for them to understand. But I think it was also very easy for them to see what it meant to me. I mean, I don't think
Mm.
that was ever in question. They're like, wow, this is something that really matters to him. It matters to the people he hangs out with and spends all his time with. So this is important. So we'll respect that. Did they understand the deeper meaning and all that? No, probably absolutely not. Not like someone who's been an Aggie for a while would probably understand better. And I do remember that conversation. I think I probably gave my mother a phone call and said, "Hi, I won't be there Christmas Eve. Um, I don't know what to tell you. I don't really have an excuse other than I got to be at Bonfire. But I'll be there, the next day as soon as I'm relieved." I'm sure there was a lot of disappointment, but I think I give credit to my parents. I think they, like I said, they saw what it meant to me, and they knew that this was something I had to do. And they're like, you know what, that's fine. It's one Christmas. We have Christmas every year. You're only going to be doing this for so long. If this is what you need to do, we support you.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So you go out there that night,
Hmm.
um, Christmas Eve night.
Yep.
Uh, was it just you the entire time?
I was out there by myself all Christmas Eve. Yep.
And what motivated you to go in there and step in and do it? When, like you said, on paper, it's the baby's responsibility.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was. So we back up to the decision. We made that, and then we started realizing the ramifications of what that meant. Someone had to be out there 24/7. Stack can't go unguarded, and that falls on the baby Browns. And then I think we started doing the basic math of, okay, we have this many Browns, we have this many days to cover. They at one point need to go home to see their families, right? And it turns out we had a bunch of them, I think, who lived pretty far away. So that limited, I believe there was one baby brown pot who lived in town. So unfortunate for this guy. I think a lot of the responsibility fell to him because he's in town, so he doesn't have to travel too far. He can take more shifts, right? Which, who's to say if that's fair or not? So as the discussions were happening, I think it kind of came down to, well, everyone wanted to be home for Christmas, but this guy lives in town, so why doesn't he just take Christmas Day? Why doesn't he just take the hard shifts because he's around, and the rest of us will come back into town after we spend the holidays with our family. And I guess some part of me must have heard that and thought, you know what, that's not super fair. It's not right for everything to fall on him. And at that point, I was super motivated. I still felt like I had a lot more to give to Bonfire. So you know what, this was a very simple thing for me to do. Just take a little more of the burden because why not?
Mm.
So I said I'd take Christmas Eve and spent the night out there, and I was relieved the next morning and made it home for Christmas. So all in all, wasn't too much time.
So there's this thing that ends up happening at some point. You got to check the timestamp on it. I don't know if the timestamp's actually on it. Um,
Are you pulling up the original Facebook post?
well, the photo behind it. Let me see, and I'll share with you. And you know the photo. Um, that one.
Yep.
Did you take that photo? You would
That was
have to
me.
have done that.
Yep.
Yeah. The funny thing is that for so many years, every year I would just the story itself is what captivated me so much. The story of this stack with Christmas lights on it. that like all of the details around it, who was there, what time, whatever. Every year, I like, wait, was it? And I would like text Dan. It took a few years before I finally remembered. Okay, all the people involved. I text Dan. Dan, was that you again, or who was that?
Right.
Dan's no, it was Andrew. Um, but
I believe you
this
texted
is
me one year and you were like, "Hey, can you let me know who took this photo?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was me."
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because it's this story is just so So what happened here? What was what led to this?
That's a big question. And when you first reached out to me about having this conversation, I'm glad you told me that this was generally, in broad strokes, what you want to talk about. Because if you were to pull this photo up to me right now, cold, and ask me what was I thinking when I did this, I couldn't tell you what I was thinking 10 years ago in college. I would have just said it probably just sounded like a good idea at the time, like, as any good college kid would say. But I've spent a little bit of time thinking about kind of what emotions probably led to this. And it all comes back to probably overcoming that original emotion of having to delay burn. I think what I was trying to do was try to I guess bring a little cheer to people, mostly myself. Even I may not have not even intended to take a picture. I probably just had the Christmas lights and wanted to set them up just for myself. But I figured, hey, I think people would get a kick out of this. I think people would enjoy getting a little bit of laugh out of a not a great situation of having a delay, and seeing Stack lit up like this probably for the first time. I'm not sure anyone ever has put Christmas lights, at least in the new fire years. So I figured people would enjoy it, get a little holiday cheer, and cheer myself up. And then I think probably some of it was also just to remind everyone that Bonfire's still there. There's still people guarding Stack. There's still people actively working. And not only that, I mean, even if we did burn, just to remind people that Bonfire doesn't end. As soon as burn isn't the end of fire; it's the start of the next one. So Bonfire is always continuing. I like the idea of using social media to just kind of show people what was going on and remind everyone that, hey, this next year's already started. This one may not be gone, but we're working and there's still people out here.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean so much tied up in that. There's
Mm-hmm.
you got the reminder to everybody, but then knowing too that like you say, the first thing that's going to put that into your head is, and when I describe what happened to everybody, it's this: it's out there alone,
Mm-hmm.
junior Redpot, possibly senior Redpot. I can't even remember. Real quick, how did that play out? Were y'all still juniors? Did y'all y'all went to seniors?
We were seniors we were seniors before burn night.
Okay, because I know there was debate as to like how do we handle this? Do we make them
Right.
stay juniors until it burns or whatever?
Oh God, that's horrendous that idea even passed.
Now, it's benefit of 2010 and 11, kind of learning from the past there. But
Right.
so a red pot out there taking the shift so that somebody who it's even possibly more convenient for can finally get a break, and then just sticking a string of lights, maybe a couple strings of lights on Stack, and it's just sitting back and looking at it. And when I describe it to people, almost unanimously, they go, like Charlie Brown, you know, just this.
Sure.
It is not a refined figure. It is a Christmas tree looking thing that has lights on it, but it warms so many people's hearts that that reminder of everything that you described. All who put those lights up? Somebody had to do it. You mean somebody's out there on Christmas Eve? Um,
Yep.
yeah. Was Mark involved? Did you go out there with the lights, or did Mark bring them to you? How'd that work out?
Mark, which Mark we talking about?
Fogel saying,
Oh, that's the named brown pot. No, he. I'm not. I don't think he was involved. I must have either had these in my truck, or I have a vague memory of stealing these from one of the other brown pots. One of my buddies, Chad, I might have stolen from his truck. I don't know where the lights came from. It might have been, I lived with a house with five guys. You might have had the grand idea of, attempting to light our house. And then it came down to the day of who's going to actually hang the things, and no one wanted to do it. So we ended up with these lights. I'm not sure the full story, but no, these came, I acquired these on my own. They weren't just sitting out at stack side. I actively brought them for one purpose or the other.
A Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Mark, and one day I'm going to talk to Mark too.
Hmm.
I, well, hell, I'll let him talk about some. I learned a lot from him as a yellow pot and as a brown pot. Um, but yeah, so what they're doing now. I don't know if you've heard this, and they're not
No,
making
tell
a
me.
huge deal out of it. Um, but they were looking at, okay, so we're gonna have to delay.
Hmm.
Um, and everybody knows the image. Now everybody's gonna know the story, but everybody knows the image of a lone bonfire stack over the Christmas holiday with lights on it. And they said, we should do that again, but now let's involve the participants. Let them leave a little something for everybody who's left behind to watch it. Um,
I like it.
and yeah, and so they're accumulating lights. I think people are mailing them lights possibly, and they're
Wow.
scrapping together and scratching together what they can. And they're going to have a day where they go out there and they're going to use some of the ropes,
Hmm.
the old expired pulley ropes that need to be disposed of anyway, and they'll hang ornaments from the ropes like garland so that they can wrap it around the stack until, you know, in time for burn, just pull the rope down, not have anything actually hanging on stack.
Right.
And lights and decorations and, you know,
That,
organically that
yeah. No, that's awesome to hear. That's so cool. I mean, take this poor quality image of poor quality lights and a half-assed job, and make it much better. Make it your own. I'm props to those guys for having the enthusiasm to do that. I think it's gonna look great.
yeah, they were uh it's fun to watch these thought processes play out where
Mhm.
it's exciting that people still have the same. Nobody has to prime anybody to have that kind of enthusiasm and motivation.
Right.
You don't have to lead the witness ever. They just, hey, so we're gonna light it and we're actually gonna make it a big event and have everybody out, but an event just for participants.
Hmm.
You know, just this group of people who has to go
Hmm.
home knowing that their stack is still there.
Right.
Let's just leave a little joy behind on your way out.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's great. No, I applaud them. I think when I did this, and this was more of a, hey, I'm going to take one for the team, and be out there, and then this needs to. But I think you can involve more people and make this much less of a bad situation all around just by having the participants really come in and help. So
yeah,
once again, I applaud them. I think that's great.
yeah. I have yet to hear if anything has come of it, but I made some little outline because I have kids. So this when they
Right.
start going, then me as having kids, I'm like, oh man, I bet kids would love to. So I just made some outline little stuff and published them. So maybe kids can decorate stuff and then put it in the mail and send it to Bonfire in
Yeah.
time. And involve everybody in being excited about it and let the participants be the one to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then they're gonna burn on
Hmm.
January 21st, which gets to sort of the last phase and the most notable one of
Hmm.
y'all's decision. So you you try as the odds stack up against you, a quarter inch of rain at a time, day by day, and you start battling this muck and you start taking stupid ideas for people like me and throwing mulch down to make it worse, or ideas that sound crazy to actually work like fly ash, and you
Hmm.
battle against it, and then you finally go, you know what, this is the equipment to fix this can't even get on site. And so you make the call and then you delay it and then you deal with the first thing, which is guarding it until the spring semester. But then y'all made a decision that had never been made before, or in the way that y'all made it, which was in 2010 and 11. Bonfire had to delay for burn ban. And then
Mm-hmm.
the decision at the time was just, listen, we operate on a shoestring. That if nobody shows up to the burn event, it doesn't cost any less to execute a burn event, because you got to get the insurance, you got to get the safety personnel, you got to get the signs, you got to get and on and on and on. And you
Mm-hmm.
do all that and spend all that money and nobody shows up. So many of those people are agreeing to be paid in arrears. And if nobody shows up, now you're done. It's over, because you can't pay people. And
Yep.
in 10 and 11, burning in 11 and 12, the decision was, we're just going to burn it without making an event out of it, because that's the only way you can get rid of it. And only participants can come. And there were people who understood that, and then there were people who didn't. And so going into this one, with
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, being to your advantage, y'all had to make a decision about, do we burn it where everybody can participate and make a full burn event out of it and spend all that money and stick our necks out? Or do we just do what we have to do and burn it? And y'all made the decision to make an event out of it. So what was, from your perspective, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, we had the blessing of previous experience to go off of, right? And that's the quintessential bonfire experience, learning from those who pass on their experience from above. And first and foremost, Aggie Bonfire is a nonprofit organization, and it needs funds to run and operate. A lot of that comes from donations, but the fact is, a lot of that also comes from a successful burn night, admission, tickets, stuff like that. All that goes into building the next fire. So if you don't have that event, you're severely hurting yourself financially for the next year. Not to say that that can't be overcome. Obviously, it has been in the past, but for us, we really wanted to set the next year up on a good foot, which would make things better for our boys, the next juniors, and everything all around. I feel like possibly for the couple years before that, Bonfire was operating. Probably emptying the budget every year. Which doesn't leave a lot of money for improvements. So if we can set ourselves up with a fat bank account and actually buy some of the things that we need to operate safely and successfully, we should absolutely do that. So we look back at what happened the previous years, burning without the full event, and then it was a no brainer. I think I think people maybe not necessarily directly in the situation might come and say, oh, well, didn't you think about this and didn't you think about that? And I guarantee you we thought about everything, and it was still the most logical and easy decision, I think, to delay it and then hold the whole event. Wait for a time when we can have a full burn, full participation, call everyone, do the full advertisement. And I really don't think that was a hard decision to make when you put everything logically on the table in front of us. So yeah, we considered everything, timing, made sure we could have everyone out there. And I think the event that we had was good and successful. And I'm happy we did things the way we did, for sure.
Well, I remember you being an early, uh, you specifically being an early proponent of taking the risk and doing the whole event.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember there wasn't necessarily a majority that was defaulting to that. Right,
Yeah.
there was a lot of concern of, let's just play it safe. Right,
Mm-hmm.
let's just keep our heads low, and let's preserve what little we got, and let's
Mm-hmm.
just scrap to next year. And at one point it was simple. It was as simple as, for everybody who doesn't believe that it's viable to take this risk, which is understandable,
Sure.
especially for there are people who you ask to be cautious because that's what they're good
Mm-hmm.
at. And for those people there that you ask to be cautious, you expect them to say, no, don't do this.
Sure.
But when the question was, what is it going to take to make you comfortable with with going the way that the Reds want to go, most of
Mm-hmm.
them. Uh, what's it going to take to make you feel good about it? It was, I can't even remember the exact amount, but it was a fair deal of money.
Yeah.
And it was, we're also going to need a truck. That's part of what we need the money for, is to replace a truck.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so what's the timeline? And it was a timeline. It was a crazy timeline. It was like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, if we can have this by 2 weeks, that'll give us enough time to commit to it and prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going off of what, y'all go put me in, coach. We'll get it done.
Right.
So 2 weeks to do it. And, you talk about Bonfire comes from support.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got 2 weeks to come up with this significant amount of money, in part to support getting a new truck. I called my dad, who does this for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, Dad, is this even possible? And he's like, dude, son, people in this profession would kill for the opportunity to work for an organization who's asking the very simple question that you're asking. And within 1 week, former students took care of it. All the bills were paid in advance, right? Like all of them, or like 90% of the bills were paid in advance.
Most of it, at least, enough for us to be extremely comfortable taking the risk. Yeah, I'm not sure what decision we would have made if we hadn't come up with that money. I'd like to say we probably would have made the same decision, but having the support, people come out of the woodworks, in a tough year was huge for us. That it made the decision even easier and more, make us even more confident in what we did.
Yeah, and everybody felt great about it. And I
Yeah.
know one of the concerns that people had was, well, if we ask them for this money and then nobody shows up, we can't pay them back. And it was, whoa, we're not asking them to give us a loan.
Right.
We're asking them to pay for the event in advance. And if the event succeeds, then Bonfire is going to be in one of the best positions it's ever been in financially. And if we're clear about that in advance, people will be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I mean, it wasn't even a topic of conversation. They're just like, here you go. And I hope it works out, and I hope you have an event, and then you can run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the event, January. That might have been two. Now at this point, it will be 3 out of 4 delayed burns have been January 21st. So chances are,
Okay.
was it January 21st? Do you remember?
I couldn't tell you.
It's something like that. January.
January, definitely January.
There's the event. You're busy, so let's just make it quick. It was huge.
Yeah, it was.
It
big
was
event. It was a big event.
massive.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, part of the risk. I didn't necessarily say right off the bat, was part of the risk of making that decision to delay was, it's the question of how motivated are people to go to burn? How much do people care about Bonfire? And that question was a little bit maybe up in the air that year. Okay, well, if we don't have it before a football game, are people going to care? Is that the only reason why people go to bonfires, to get hyped for this arbitrary football game that's not even about TU anymore? So if we hold it in January, where there's nothing around it, there's no excitement, there's no nothing, are people going to show up? And boy, did people show up. It was huge. The excitement was there. I mean, it was overwhelming. It was really cool. I think that was, of the 4 fires I was involved with, I think that was probably, I don't know numbers, but numbers wise, it felt like the largest that year. Probably even bigger than my senior year. But it felt big, and yeah, it was an awesome event.
I'm convinced to this day. I know for a fact it was the biggest event that had been had off campus,
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still to this day convinced it might have been the biggest crowd ever off campus.
I believe it. I've seen some crowds, and that was a hell of a crowd.
And I remember in picking the date, the discussion of, well, what day do we pick, and what do we align it with, and what kind of events need to be going on. And you just look at that time of year anyway, but especially that year, there's nothing. There's nothing. We
Mm-hmm.
can't push it off until there is something, because then that's getting pretty
Mm-hmm.
late and we're already behind. Like you say, you're
Mm-hmm.
working immediately after burn.
Yep.
But you're already behind. Can't do it any earlier. The students aren't going to be there, especially the ones
Yep.
that built it. So this is the date, and there's nothing. Sorry. So it's in the spring. It's not even a tennis match.
Yep.
And then yet, if you build it, they will come. If you burn it, they will come.
They came. It was incredible.
So, what were y'all's expectations? I mean, was it, oh, we're just going to burn it at the end of the night, or maybe some people will show up? I mean, what were you thinking was going to happen that morning?
I mean, we planned it. We planned it as if this were no different than any normal burn. You know, we contacted our vendors. We didn't skimp on that. We didn't try to, save money by saying, okay, well, we're not going to pay for this. We won't pay for the porta potties or pay for the lights, pay for whatever. We planned it as if this was going to be a full event, and probably even over prepared it because the field was still a little wet. I mean, the volume of rain that you described was accurate, and that takes a while to dissipate during a cold Texas winter. So we probably overplanned it, and we just carried on as usual. And I guess the expectation or the hope was that, hey, let's just break even. Let's just make sure we're not setting ourselves off on a bad foot. Let's just at least cover the costs, have a good event for everybody, get everyone motivated for the next season, and just carry that motivation on to a good year. But I mean, that expectation was blown out of the water. I mean, as you said, the attendance was crazy. We had plenty of money for all the things that we needed. I think that there's a new truck involved somewhere in there. There was all sorts of great things. So whatever expectation we had was blown sky high.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was one of the, and I usually am one of the guys on the board that's just like, do it. It's going to happen. Just do it. Let's go
Right.
crazy. And thank goodness there's strong personalities in the other direction, and
Sure, you
even
need both sides.
so, what's that?
Oh, sure, you need both sides, and it helps.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of those voices I even invited to be a voice, because I knew that we disagree about everything. So,
Mm.
And even so, just to say, even so, the guy that's like the craziest about, let's just do it. This will be
Mm.
great. I was there looking out going, I was so wrong, because I way underestimated what was going to happen tonight. So it was great. And the
Mhm.
full life cycle of decisions that you and your buddies made and committed to see through to the end, shit didn't happen to you. You happened to shit. And you took a horrible situation and you reminded people what Bonfire is about. You didn't lament the trappings that don't matter. You taught lessons. You learned lessons yourself. You brought a little light and joy to a lonely, sad night that is resonating to today. You rang the bell. It's still ringing. People are taking that and making it their own organically. And
Mhm.
then you burned it. And you had one of the biggest burns, possibly still the biggest burn, off campus in the spring. And again, reminded people. I think it was after your fire that James Fuquay said they did what we only ever just said. They proved what we only ever just had to talk about. And they burned it
Mhm.
just to make another one. And here we are going into this year. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah,
It's not the end of the
yeah,
world. In fact, it's a wonderful beginning.
exactly. I couldn't say any better myself, Dion. I think you have a way with words, and I think you captured that pretty eloquently and accurately. So yeah,
I'm just
props to those
describing
guys.
what y'all show me.
Yeah. Well, deal. No one ever said a Redpot was good with words, but actions matter, right?
That's it. Let's be fair. Redpots like to make like, well, I don't know. But you put them in front of somebody and they say the right things.
Sure. Most of the time. Most of the time. I'm gonna harp on Shane Hennig one more time though. He's not a guy I'd ever give a microphone in a room with people bunch of wearing suits. So
Uh, uh.
just
But
kidding,
to his
Shane. Love you.
credit, and to everybody, in the same vein, it's there's the conversation every year. All right, who do we call when the media is ready? And 99% of the time, it's head stack. And
It's true.
never has there been somebody who can't do it who said they can.
Right.
Like, everybody knows what they could do. And Shane was one who was like, not me.
There's got to be a little bit of interest in the limelight to be a good head stack. I think you gotta have the humility, but play yourself up a little bit. I think it's good
Yeah.
for you.
Oh, dude, Patrick Bailey was epic at that.
The quintessential. I can't think of a better name that embodies that.
Dude, when KVTX, I think it was again, they came out and they wanted to film somebody in the swings, and Patrick's like, I got this. And they're on fifth tier or something. So
Right.
it's like 4 feet off the ground. And
But it's
Patrick's
the
like, well,
angle.
yeah. He's like, if you stand right there, you get this angle. It'll look like I'm way up. And it damn sure did. And he's up there swinging from it like he's Tarzan, but he got up on a step stool. Like, it was awesome.
Love it. That's awesome, man.
Well, hey, I appreciate it, Andrew. It's
Of
always a
course.
pleasure.
Always is.
And yeah, I think it's going to help a lot of people, motivate a lot of people to hear that perspective. And I appreciate you taking the time to share it.
Yeah, anytime. I'm happy to hear that picture, made such an impact on people. I posted it just for fun, but have this come back 10 years later and have a story about it is really cool. So I appreciate you inviting me on, Dion. Anytime. This was fun.
Thanks, Andrew. Hey,
Yep.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.
Merry Christmas, Dion. Talk to you later.
Gig 'em.
You.
Let me share this with you. I told the Reds that I would be talking to you,
Mm-hmm.
and your great, 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 great grandson said, awesome. I've met him before. Cool guy. So, you're a cool guy.
I appreciate the compliment.